The above quote from the first episode of the Netflix series Baby Reindeer is the biggest lie in television history. It's a lie told by Netflix and the show's creator Richard Gadd out of greed and lust for fame. A lie designed to attract more viewers, get more attention, to make more money, and to viciously destroy the life of Fiona Harvey, an innocent woman defamed by Netflix and Richard Gadd at a magnitude and scale without precedent. That is the opening paragraph of the 34-page lawsuit filed against Netflix by Fiona Harvey, who you may know as Martha. And if you don't know her at all, not even as Martha, no worries, stick around, I'm gonna explain. Martha is the star female character in Netflix hit show Baby Reindeer. The show premiered in April of 2024, and according to the lawsuit, drew over 56 million views in less than a month. Baby Reindeer tells the apparently debatably true story of Richard Gadd's struggle to find fame as a comedian in London, and more importantly, tells the story of his experience being stalked, assaulted, and harassed by an older woman, Martha. In just 7 episodes, Gadd, who plays himself in the show, shares his experience of being sent more than 40,000 emails, 350 hours of voicemails, 744 tweets, and 46 Facebook messages across 4 phone accounts and more than 100 pages of letters during a 3-year period. And of course, there was online discourse. Gadd's claims that this was a true story sent viewers into a frenzy to unveil the real Martha, which pushed Fiona Harvey into the limelight after viewers found old tweets of Fiona's that used strikingly similar language to the language used in the show. Now, Harvey has filed a lawsuit against Netflix with 6 claims, including defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, negligence, gross negligence, violations of her right of publicity under California common law, and California statutes at Section 3344. First up, let's talk about defamation. Now, to qualify as defamation, Harvey must satisfy these elements of proof at trial: that Netflix made a statement of asserted fact, that it was not true, that there was no legal privilege in making the assertion, that the statement is of the nature that is tending to injure or cause problems for someone, and that they were at least negligent in making the statement. Fiona is claiming that Netflix has violated this law and her rights based on the show's depiction of Martha, and by proxy, Fiona, as a convicted stalker who served a 4.5-year sentence in Scotland, who pled guilty and was sentenced to a 9-month sentence and a 5-year restraining order, who sexually assaulted Gadd and violently attacked him by smashing a glass over his head and gouging his eyes, and who stalked a policeman and waited outside Gadd's residence every day for up to 16 hours a day. Honestly, when I heard about this lawsuit, my initial thought was, no shot. There's not going to be a claim here. But holy cow! Netflix went out of its way to make sure that the viewers know that the whole show is supposed to be one true statement, that the show itself is just true. As we all know, shows and movies can be enthralling without being true. That's what we call art. The point of having art be true is to raise the stakes for the viewer. And certainly Netflix went out of its way to do that. And the lawsuit does a great job of explaining Netflix's strategy in that way. And then there is this middle ground. You sometimes see shows and movies that say that they are based on a true story. And perhaps that tiny equivocation would have moved the needle in the instance of this particular show, and therefore no lawsuit. But I'm not sure that would work. So Netflix and Gadd 100% said the following things, which the lawsuit says are 100% demonstrably false: the conviction, the assaults, plural, and the stalking. Let's assume that the assaults are not true. As I understand it, Gadd has already confirmed that Fiona wasn't a convicted stalker. So just for this video, let's assume all statements that the lawsuit complains about are in fact not true. So we have asserted facts that aren't true, and there's no legal excuse for them, such as they're not being made part of a governmental or judicial process, and that they are bad in the sense that they would tend to cause problems for the person about whom the misstatements have been made. So now we're left with the question of whether Netflix was negligent or worse in saying these false negative things. And for that, well, this analysis is going to be a little suspenseful, and here's why. As of right now, we simply don't know what steps Netflix took to make sure that Fiona Harvey wasn't named or accurately depicted in the movie. I want to run through the other claims of the lawsuit with you, and then we'll circle back to this critical question. The second claim in Harvey's lawsuit is the intentional infliction of emotional distress. The lawsuit details the onslaught of Facebook messages that Harvey received after being found online. They look pretty bad. It also describes Harvey's emotional distress which they described as having been made manifested by objective symptomatology. Harvey is physically weak. She has and continues to experience anxiety, nightmares, panic attacks, shame, depression, nervousness, stomach pains, loss of appetite and fear, extreme stress and sickness, all directly caused by the lies told about her in Baby Reindeer. Harvey is fearful of leaving her home or checking the news. As a direct result of Baby Reindeer, Harvey has become extremely secluded and isolated in fear of the public, going days without leaving her home. This sounds awful. Now, this claim turns on much of the same analysis as the defamation claim, so stay tuned for that deep dive. Harvey then next accuses Netflix of both negligence and gross negligence. I don't care for these claims too much in this lawsuit. They seem to me to be derivative of the prior two claims. I mean, I understand the strategy for including these claims. I mean, what the lawsuit says is that Netflix owed Harvey a duty of care to accurately represent her, and that they failed to do this in a way that involved an extreme risk considering the probability and magnitude of potential harm to Harvey. The duty of care part of this lawsuit is maybe a bit far-fetched, but again, the analysis goes right back to this critical question of what did Netflix do to make sure that they didn't harm Harvey, which this is exactly what we are getting to. Now, the last two laws that Harvey claims Netflix failed to comply with are violations of the right of publicity under California common law and under California statute, namely Civil Code Section 3344. The lawsuit says that defendants used Harvey's identity and likeness for commercial advantage without her consent, resulting in injury to Harvey. For the purposes of my video here today, there's no need to distinguish between the California statute and the common law rule, because they both turn on the fundamental right of a person to own and possess and control and to benefit from their own name and image and likeness. And the allegation is that Netflix trampled that right when they told Harvey's story without, cutting her in on the deal. So those are all of the claims that Harvey has filed against Netflix. But she didn't file those claims against Richard Gadd. Was that a typo? I mean, did someone just forget to sue Richard Gadd? Both Gadd and Netflix have claimed that the details of the show are true. Who truly holds responsibility and liability in these types of scenarios? Well, the reason that Gadd was not sued probably is a simple one. He did not publish the series. Okay, look, he helped make it, obviously, but it was Netflix who put the statements about Harvey, the nasty, misleading, dangerous statements about Harvey, out into the world. And here's the moment that we've all been waiting for. Did Netflix violate the prohibition against defamation? These rules that are hundreds of years old in telling this story with so many pejorative falsehoods. How did they identify Fiona Harvey in the show? Did they use her full name? No. Well, maybe they just used her first name. No. Did they use her last name? Not that either. There's nothing in the show itself which indicates that Fiona is Martha. I mean, she is, and she's publicly saying that she is, but can you know that just by watching the show? The legal analysis here is on a razor-thin margin because there's simply nothing in the text of the script of the show or in the electronic medium, the video, that says Fiona is Martha, Martha is Fiona. And in fact, of course, she's not. Because remember that Martha is a character in a show. She's a recreation, an interpretation. She's false. She's contrived. Yet part of the contrivance, part of the art or the theater of this particular show is to say that it's not contrived, that this is who she really is. This is what she really did, but it isn't. And we know this for sure, even though the audience is shown the warning that this is a true story. Look, the lawsuit beats the drum on this fact. I get it. On the other hand, the lawsuit also acknowledges that Gadd's stated position, at least in interviews, was that they'd gone to great lengths to disguise the identity of the character, which strikes me as wholly incompatible with the assertion that the story is just true. You can't have it both ways. It can't be true, aka honest, aka faithful, aka unchanged, and also be disguised. I mean, heck, the number one thing that you could do to disguise the character, to make it so that no one can figure out who it was, is just to make up a totally baseless criminal history. Have her commit crimes on camera. A bunch of fictionalizing stuff that's very far from who she is. And the lawsuit says that the studio did just that they were not faithful to who Fiona was and to what she did. And to that extent, the show fictionalized her, but only to make her worse. It's hard to modernize some of these older laws like defamation. The old law is that you can't say something false about someone that hurts them, but they didn't name her. And in fact, the internet crumb that did out her, according to the lawsuit, this peculiar tweet from 2014 about hanging curtains, that tweet wasn't referenced in the show. The language in the tweet was, but not the fact that it was in a tweet. And what I mean is this: they made the character Scottish. They made the character a lawyer. They made her older. They made her plump. They did all these things that were true to Fiona. But without that tweet, or even if she denied that tweet, maybe no one ever makes the connection. The show did not identify Fiona. She apparently agreed that it was her in connection with the tweet. Did Netflix know about that tweet ahead of time? It looks like Harvey hasn't tweeted in about 8 years. Did Gad know about that tweet? What if he forgot it? What if he never saw it? What if he looked for it? What if Fiona responded to those people who asked her by saying, "Oh, I'm not Martha, but I did come up with that hilarious idea of a curtain hanging as a euphemism"? It's almost like in agreeing that she was Martha, that she brought this on herself. Couldn't she look at the content of the story and say with a clear conscience, "That's not me," and be done with it? I think she could have, because what she's saying is that the character was very, very different from her. Unless she was like, a crazy stalker of Richard Gadd. And maybe she was. The lawsuit doesn't really deny that generalization. Let me repeat, the lawsuit does not deny that she was something of a stalker of the comedian. Of all the bad things that the movie depicts about her, the paperwork doesn't deny that she stalked Gadd. There's just no obvious answer to the question of, was Netflix negligent in allowing a fictionalized account of the Harvey-Gadd interactions to be published with this thin veneer of the whole thing as being true. They didn't identify her. She was outed by her own tweet. She didn't have to embrace the publicity. In the end, this is an issue that will have to be argued to a jury. I can tell you for sure that with the stakes this high, because she sued for $170 million, both sides will definitely hire jury consultants, and they will have mock trials and focus groups to try to figure out which arguments work and which ones don't work. But as with all good courtroom dramas, I would discourage you from popping your popcorn too early. Because as great of theater as this legal battle could turn out to be, like as not, it will result in a quiet settlement. I could see a payment to Harvey of between $10 million and $20 million with no admission of wrongdoing on the part of Netflix, and everyone goes their own ways. But hey, look, you never know. And just because Gadd himself was not sued, don't think, not even for a second, that he's out of the woods yet. Because if he misled or deceived Netflix in any way about the nature of the story or the background of the facts, any of the particulars, he could be in very hot water. Imagine with me, if you will, that Gadd is a somewhat small-time British comedian who had all his dreams come true when Netflix agreed to buy and tell his story. Some of Netflix's biggest, baddest, most fire-breathing lawyers are going to make sure that Gadd signs a contract with Netflix that is very, very protective of Netflix. What if he indemnified Netflix? Is that so outrageous? I don't think so. Indemnification is an agreement whereby Gadd would become legally liable for any misstep that's been made by Netflix. And it seems apparent that missteps were in fact made, since Gadd himself has come out since the show and admitted that the show, quote, exists in a sort of fictional realm. Even though it's based on truth, it exists in a fictional realm. Netflix has already vowed to fight Harvey's claim for damages, so this will most likely not be my last video on this topic. I am waiting for Netflix to file an answer. I want to see what they say. Unless you absolutely hated it and you never want to hear me speak on this topic again, then I'll be quiet. Let me know in the comments, along with your pro se opinion. Do you believe that Gadd stretched the truth a little too far? Are Harvey's claims valid? I want to know your thoughts. And hey, if internet sleuths can find the real-life Martha based on an 8-year-old tweet, then I know that you will not have any trouble finding the subscribe button. Hit it and get out of here. Who you might know as Marva.